The first summer after I graduated high school, my brother stole everything I owned that wasn't nailed down. It wasn't a dramatic theft, no midnight getaway or broken locks. It was quieter, neater, almost loving in its deceit. He just took the envelope from my drawer, the one marked college savings in my careful handwriting. Inside it, 3 years of babysitting, tutoring, and waitressing. $8,642.12. The number I'd counted so many times I could see it when I closed my eyes. He didn't even leave a note. 2 weeks later, a post appeared on social media. A smiling photo of my brother Luke standing beside a lake. Caption, "Dreams coming true. Launching my own family-run summer camp this July. A place for kids to learn, laugh, and grow. Lake Bright Camp. Family business, family business." I stared at the phrase until the words dissolved. Luke had always been the golden child, charming, spontaneous. That brand of recklessness people mistake for vision. When we were kids, I built sandcastles. He kicked them down and called it art. But people adored him for it. Teachers, neighbors, girlfriends, even our parents, who alternated between exasperation and awe. I was the opposite. Steady, predictable, too careful. And careful people, I was learning, make the best victims. When I confronted him, he didn't apologize. He laughed like I'd missed the punchline. "Relax, Em," he said. "You'll thank me when this takes off. It's for both of us." "Both of us?" I said. "Yeah, family name, family dream. You can come work for me when it's up. Work for him." With my own money, I didn't hit him. I wish I had. Instead, I stood there, stunned, while he drove away, the taillights cutting red ribbons into the dusk. That summer, Lake Bright Camp opened to glossy online reviews and shining photos of smiling kids in matching t-shirts. Luke had a knack for appearances. He posted videos of campfires, canoe races, s'mores nights. All the things I'd once scribbled in my notebooks as ideas for the children's program I wanted to run someday. People called him an inspiration. The local paper wrote, "Young entrepreneur revives lake tradition with family summer camp." I wanted to print it out and set it on fire. But here's the thing about revenge. It doesn't always come roaring. Sometimes it germinates quietly like a seed beneath the dirt. I didn't go to college that fall. Instead, I got a job at a small community center near the same lake. I learned how to run after-school programs, manage supplies, write grants. For years, I stayed invisible, patient, because I wasn't just going to get my money back. I was going to take back the dream, and when I did, it would look like kindness. It would look like summer. But underneath, every lesson, every song, every rule would carry one truth. You can steal an idea. But you can't steal the person who made it real. The land wasn't much to look at when I first found it. 3 acres of overgrown shoreline, an old boathouse that leaned like a sigh, and a gravel road that vanished every time it rained. But it had one thing Luke's property didn't. History. Our grandfather's initials were still carved into the wooden dock. H. Bright. 1952. The Bright family name used to mean something around here, long before my brother turned it into a marketing hashtag. I ran my hand over the faded letters, the rough grooves, and whispered, "You built something honest once. I'll try to do the same." I worked the next 3 years like a woman possessed. By day, I wrote grant proposals for youth programs and community development. By night, I cleaned out the boathouse, repaired fences, and learned to build things with my own hands. Every nail I drove felt like punctuation on a promise. Every bruise was proof of movement. I wasn't rich, but I was strategic. Luke had charm. I had persistence. And in the long run, persistence outlasts applause. I called my place Camp Hearthlight. Not after our family, not after me, but after warmth. After what it meant to build something that lasted. While Luke's website showed perfect smiles and shiny facilities, mine opened with a single line. A camp for kids who've never had a place to belong. I meant it. Half my campers came on scholarships, the rest through community programs that didn't ask about grades or home situations. Luke catered to wealth. I built for need. But beneath every act of compassion, I kept one flame alive, a private burning satisfaction, because every kind thing I did made his lies more obvious. Every camper who came to my program and left stronger, steadier, more honest. They were walking proof that the Bright legacy didn't belong to him. I'd watch from my dock as the boats from Lake Bright Camp drifted across the water, their laughter echoing. Sometimes I could see Luke on the opposite shore, holding his clipboard, shouting orders in his bright, performative way. He didn't see me. He didn't need to. Not yet. One evening, late in the second summer, I got a call from a parent who'd mistakenly dialed my number thinking it was Luke's. "Hi," she said breathlessly. "I'm looking for someone about refunds. My son came home saying there were bed bugs and no supervision." I froze. "I think you have the wrong camp," I said. "Oh, you're the other one," she said. "Sorry, I thought you were related." I hung up, my pulse steady, then slower, then still. The cracks were showing. Revenge, I'd learned, didn't have to be declared. It could be cultivated, like soil turned slowly, again and again, until something begins to grow. By the fourth summer, Camp Hearthlight had a waiting list. We hosted art nights, environmental projects, family cookouts. Local papers started calling us the heart of the lake. When a journalist came to interview me, she asked, "Any relation to Luke Bright of Lake Bright Camp?" I smiled. "Yes, he's my brother." "And rivals?" she teased. I shrugged. "I prefer the word neighbors." The next week, the article ran with the headline, "Sisters Camp brings healing and honesty back to Lake Bright." And just like that, the algorithm that once crowned him king began to whisper my name instead. Still, I wasn't done. Luke's empire was built on illusion, and illusions crumble best when you shine light on them. I was patient. Because every summer, new parents came to my camp after leaving his. Every one of them brought stories. And stories, when arranged carefully, can become something stronger than a lawsuit. They can become truth. By the fifth summer, Camp Hearthlight no longer felt like something I built. It felt alive. The air hummed with songs, laughter, the low hum of the lake against the dock. Sometimes, when the last canoe was tied and the sky went bruised purple with sunset, I could almost feel my mother's hand on my shoulder. She used to say, "Kindness isn't soft. Emily, it's steel wrapped in silk." I finally understood, because kindness, real kindness, was how I was winning. Luke's camp, just across the cove, was starting to splinter. Parents whispered about neglected cabins, unsafe activities, money that didn't add up. Local sponsors quietly pulled back their donations, but Luke didn't know why. He thought it was bad luck. He didn't realize that bad luck has a name when it's earned. It began with one parent, Mrs. Ruiz. Her son, Mateo, had attended Lake Bright Camp and come home with a sprained wrist and a story about being left unsupervised near the archery range. When she came to enroll him with us, she looked embarrassed. "I just want him to have a safe summer," she said. That night, around the fire pit, I asked if Mateo wanted to share what he'd learned from his last camp. He hesitated, then said softly, that grown-ups don't always mean what they say. The other kids went quiet. Then one of them said, "But you came back anyway. That's brave." The fire crackled, throwing golden light across their faces, small, flickering testaments of resilience. I said nothing. I didn't need to. Word of our nightly truth talks spread faster than I expected. Parents started showing up early to pick up their kids, sometimes staying just to listen. We talked about fear, failure, honesty, and repair, about what family really means. And without ever naming him, we were dismantling Luke's myth. One story, one confession, one healed child at a time. Midway through that summer, Luke appeared at my gate. He looked tired, not in the way you get from hard work, but from chasing your own reputation too long. "Em," he said, "we need to talk." I led him to the dock, the same one with our grandfather's carved initials. "You've been talking to my camper's parents," he said. "I talk to a lot of parents," I replied. "It's part of running a camp." Don't play dumb. You're poisoning them against me. Luke, I said softly. I don't have to say anything. They see for themselves. His jaw tightened. I gave you a chance to be part of something. I smiled faintly. I am part of something, just not yours. He looked at me for a long time, then shook his head. You always hated me, he said. No, I said. I loved you. That's what made it hurt. He turned to leave. Before he walked away, he muttered, You think you're better than me. I didn't answer, because the truth was more complicated. It wasn't about being better. It was about being real, and real things I'd learned survive storms. That night, I sat by the fire pit after everyone had gone to bed. The embers glowed low, red like the heart of something old and alive. I thought of the money I'd lost, the years I'd spent rebuilding. But mostly, I thought of the kids sleeping in their bunks, kids who'd been lied to, overlooked, underestimated, and who were learning that love could be consistent. That's what my revenge had become, a steady act of care. Not destruction, correction. The next morning, I found a box on my porch. Inside, a crumpled Camp Bright t-shirt, a handful of refund envelopes, and a note in Luke's handwriting. You win. I'm done. The last week of every summer was always the hardest. The laughter softened, the nights cooled, and everything we'd built, the small universe of tents and trust and friendship, started to dissolve back into the ordinary world. But that year, the air around Lake Bright carried something different, a kind of stillness that wasn't sadness exactly, more like peace that had finally been earned. On the morning of the closing ceremony, I walked down to the dock to hang the camp banner. The sun shimmered on the lake, gold and glassy, and I could see the faint outline of the old sign from across the shore, Lake Bright Camp, half the letters missing now, the paint cracked by weather and time. Luke hadn't been back since that note. Rumor said he'd sold the property to a developer. Others said he was working in another state, trying to start over. For months I thought about writing to him. But some stories didn't need more chapters. They just needed to stop where the truth finally outgrew the lie. The kids began to gather by the fire pit, the same one where we'd shared all those truth talks. Each child held a small stone, something we did every closing night, a tradition I'd started the first year. We called it the Promise Stone. They'd toss their stone into the lake while naming something they wanted to keep: courage, laughter, honesty, home. When it was my turn, I hesitated. I'd never spoken one for myself, so I said, quietly, forgiveness. And then, after a long pause, and roots, because that's what I had built here. Not walls, not trophies, not illusions, but roots. After the ceremony, one of the parents, Mrs. Ruiz, approached me. She said, You know, I used to think camps were just about keeping kids busy. But this place, it feels like healing. Her eyes were wet, and she smiled as she handed me an envelope. Inside was a photo. Her son, Mateo, holding a hand-painted sign that said, Camp Hearthlight Forever. My throat tightened. I'd never asked for gratitude, but sometimes it arrives anyway. Quiet as a gift, heavy as a lifetime. That night, after everyone had gone home, I walked along the lake's edge. The moon floated low, its reflection trembling like a breath. I passed the ruins of Luke's old dock, half sunk, nails rusted, planks missing. The sound of the water against it was soft, forgiving. I thought of all the summers we'd spent together as kids, racing canoes, roasting marshmallows, making promises neither of us could keep. He wasn't just my brother. He was the first person who taught me about betrayal, and therefore about strength. And maybe that was a kind of gift, too. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the envelope he'd once stolen from me. I'd kept it all these years. Creased and worn, still marked college savings. There was no money in it now. Just a note I'd written recently, folded small, paid in full. I set it gently on the lake and watched it drift, the paper soaking, the ink spreading until it vanished completely. The next morning, a storm rolled in. One of those late summer tempests that scatter branches and leave the air new again. When it passed, the sky broke open, washed clean. I stood at the top of the hill, overlooking the camp, the cabins glistening, the flags still fluttering, and for the first time, I realized my revenge was never about taking anything back. It was about making something that couldn't be taken at all. Something lasting. Something true. That evening, as the sunset poured honey over the lake, I hung a new wooden sign on the front gate. Camp Hearthlight, founded by Emily Bright, a family reclaimed. Then I walked down to the dock, barefoot, the boards warm under my feet. I dipped my toes into the water, the same water that had once held my brother's reflection, and now held only mine. The wind stirred, carrying the scent of cedar and smoke, and for a moment, I thought I heard a child's laughter across the lake, faint, distant, fading. It didn't matter if it was real, because I was, and that was enough.